We hosted the first ever panel here at IMS last year about South Asians in electronic music. This is the follow-up. It felt like last year was about us showing up for the first time, but this is about how we evolve this conversation now into true representation and ownership. So I'm very blessed to be getting into this with some incredible colleagues from around the world who are doing innovative work both in their sounds and for the communities around them as well. So let me introduce Farah here to my left. Farah Nanji, also known as her artist name Ninja, is a DJ, a producer, owner of the label Tales of Twilight, and she is a curator of this whole summit here at IMS. So we have her to thank for all these incredible conversations we've been enjoying so far. Kunal's not here yet. I'll intro him when he does arrive. Mehdi here on my right is the founder of Descendants, which is a global Afro-electronic platform and community connecting sounds and cultures across cities worldwide. And then on the end here is Ahad, aka Ahadadream. He is a DJ, producer, and co-founder of Dialed In, which is a leading force in UK club culture, championing South Asian sounds globally. They are an impressive bunch.
There he is.
Okay, perfect timing. Kunal bhai, aajo.
We're running on Desi time, huh?
Yeah, Desi time for sure. We'll let him off because he's just literally landed off a plane, so it's all good. I may as well do your intro now. Kunal Merchant is co-founder of Indo Warehouse, a global collective and label shaping the Indo House movement and reimagining South Asian culture in electronic music. So, our South Asian sounds are a fundamental part of who we are, the origin stories of our foundation, and this conversation right now. I thought we could just kick things off really by talking about what it was like growing up respectively as South Asians in cities like New York and London. And I'm going to take a guess here that many of us did not see brown kids like us on dance floors growing up. So I wanted to know how you discovered this sound. Kunal, you may as well go first.
Oh, man. Hello, everyone. I grew up in Texas, and so the notion of going to hear electronic music was always weird for like a long time. I think we're all probably a group of weird kids that like different things, and so it was always tough to try to break away from the normal group and go explore new things. But I guess my appreciation for South Asian music was mostly driven by what my parents forced me to listen to or attend. As you can imagine, growing up in a state like Texas, you try to acclimate and fit in where you can, and so there was a bit of resistance for me in wanting to hear South Asian music and appreciate it. But I think over time, and I've definitely now in my life, I so much appreciate the fact that my parents pushed me to understand my culture.
How about for you, Farah?
Yeah, I'm a product of the British Empire, which can be a bit of a a bit mind-boggling because my roots are India, Pakistan, Kenya, but born in London. And my family I'm so lucky to have the most supportive family, but they're not ravers, they don't go out to like fabric or anything like that. But they were always, because they run Montessori schools, they've always been really particular in the way that they raised me, where they didn't want to, force anything on me, which is quite non-traditional because obviously we know a lot of our culture are, kind of expected to go into the big corporate world. And I have to say they gave me enormous blind trust to be going out to fabric at 15. And I know it worried my mum a lot. Bless her, she was staying up till 4 or 5 in the morning waiting for me and going to work at like 8, 3 hours later. And I feel bad that I put her through that. But I tell her now it's all for the greater good. But she always said to me, if you're going to go out into this world, I want you to do it respectfully, no drugs, be mindful of how much alcohol you consume. And, and I'm actually really happy that I followed her and I respected those rules, because I think actually it's given me that peak performance laser focus that you kind of need to be in this industry and wear many hats. So it's a little insight into my upbringing.
Midi, we were saying just coming down here, it's very rare to meet an Afghani in the electronic music scene. Please tell us about your experience growing up.
First, honored to be with some really awesome creatives and artists here. Appreciate the invitation, Farah. And thank you all for being here. But growing up, I grew up in New York. I was born in New York, first generation. My parents are from Afghanistan, and I think very different. We've all had, we all come from kind of the same region, but very different experiences. My parents were refugees, so my upbringing was very much centered around that experience of like survival and being in an environment of like New York where I wasn't seeing Afghans around outside of the the four walls of the home that I grew up in. So my environment was, of course, shaped by my culture, and music was a way for me to connect to my culture. Obviously being in a very foreign place, I don't think I would have really understood what being Afghan was if it wasn't for the music, right? And then on top of that, I had, being in Queens, I had, people on my block that were Jamaican, from Trinidad, from India, from, Black Americans. So I'm soaking in all of this music in this environment. And so I feel like as much as I'm Afghan, I think what ended up eventually drawing me to electronic music was that I'm just someone who soaks in all of the music in my environment. And that's always been my way of connecting to my environment, was always through music and getting to know the people around me. So, as much as my culture has obviously influenced my, my path, but also being an outsider, like Kunal said, you're just finding ways to latch onto or connect to your environment, and music was that for me. So when I eventually discovered electronic music and fell in love with it, after being more of like a hip hop kid, that was really it for me. And I think I found community through the music as well, and I resonated with the ethos that kind of surrounded electronic music, where it was more togetherness, it was happiness, joy, all these things that we're, a lot of the reasons why I think a lot of us are probably here today, or how we connected with electronic music as well. So,
Ahad, tell us about your experience of moving to the UK from Pakistan. And I have to get you to shout out the formative experience that you had at the British cultural institution known as Butlins. Please explain to our non-Brits what that is.
Yeah. So I was born in Pakistan. I moved over to the UK in my early teens. In the early 2000s, I feel like there was a lot of Islamophobia around, and I came it was a baptism of fire for me as someone with a strong Pakistani accent going to school. So that was like my first experience of like British culture, I'd say. And then I guess, as you mentioned, it's about assimilation and survival, right? You kind of hide your identity more than anything. But in a musical sense, I went to a club when I was 14 years old. My parents we were living an hour north of London in Bedfordshire. I was like one of the only brown people in my school. And then we used to go to these underage nights. And over there I was exposed to UK genres like garage, jungle, grime, UK funky, and all of that stuff I just loved. And I think that it just lives within me now. And then that drove me into another wormhole of like Qom, Kuduro, Bailey funk, and all of this you can see is like quite rhythmic music, and I think that dates back to probably my first experiences of music at weddings, sitting around Dhol and like all of the khalas singing and stuff like that, and all of us doing choreographed dances at weddings with our cousins and stuff. And so I was just thought why, when we see Bailey funk and we see Kuduro and stuff like that, why isn't there like a South Asian version of that? And so I started putting a lot more like dhol and stuff into my music and experimenting with the textures of that and how that could sound. I think like the music, when it comes to traditional South Asian music, lives in me from just having grown up there. Things like, Qawwali, Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan and things like that. I started my boiler room with that, and the type of impact it has, people crying and even white people coming up to me in the smoking area of clubs and singing Nusrat to me and stuff like that. It's just, it's a journey of self-acceptance, I'd say, throughout that whole period. and like music has been the vehicle for me to do that.
I think our culture and the rich palette of sounds available to us through the traditions that we've grown up in informs our sound in many different ways. For you, Kunal, and Indo Warehouse generally, it is not something you scatter in. It's front and central to everything that you do. And yourself and Kahani from the get-go have really been very vocal advocates for defining Indo house as a genre. You've really championed that. For anyone that might not know why that's so central and important to you, just explain why it is. And have you seen any progress in that over the past year or so?
Shout out to my boy Kahani, he's there.
Hello.
Yeah, I think I was actually here 2 years ago on a panel at IMS with, there were some people from Beatport on the panel, and I was saying that they should create a genre, a space for us. Look, I think calling something allows you to communicate to people what the music is, but it's really less about the name. It's just more about the position and the ability to share that we're creating something that for us is not new. I think everyone just described their own journey with it and how our music from our culture and our music from our upbringing influences us. But in a time where I think there's other genres present and so inspiring, I grew up in Texas, as I mentioned. Latin house was just a part of my upbringing. I used to hear Latin DJs mix Latin music on the radio from the point of 12 and up. And of course, Afro house has influenced me so much. So when we think about a position where South Asian music can have a placement in the clubs, we just gave it a name and we pushed for it. Now, I think that there's multiple reasons why it should have a place. But what I said to the person from Beatport is there's an economic opportunity for us right now, for you guys, in fact. If you create a genre, one, you're going to have a bunch of producers make music and actually get their music labeled correctly or labeled closer to what it is, because a lot of our music we upload and it has to be labeled as Afro House, which is just not factual. And so one, you could do that, just categorically create something so we have a place for our music to live. Two, if you do that, you're going to have a bunch of producers feel there's an opportunity for them to make this music and have it live there. And Beatport's going to probably make a lot of money from doing that. That's just kind of a foundational idea. But what we've seen since Indo Warehouse started, and Ahad can speak to it from Dialed In days as well, is that like when you create these spaces for people, they really appreciate it and they grow in their own journey. Not our music, what we do for Indo Warehouse doesn't have to be what other people do, but we've noticed a dramatic shift from our time period, just because we've been observing it from that point. There are so many more producers, artists, and DJs bringing their South Asian culture into their sets, into their production, and it's done with so much more pride than I've ever seen. So generally speaking, calling something allows us to communicate to the world what we're doing easier. But I still believe there's an opportunity for platforms like Beatport and others to like create spaces for us. They just created an amazing one called Latin Electronic. And I think that allowing people to tag their music the right way just helps all of us understand where things are at and where it comes from.
Meaty, I just think, given with what you've done with Descendants, from your live shows to the artists that you work with, you've really been along for the ride of the growth of Afro House. So we was together yesterday watching the business report released of just the astronomical success of the genre. Is there a kind of blueprint you think that us who are creating something that might be called Indo House can learn from Afro House? And also, what have been some of the limitations maybe with that success and the kind of, we talked about the way it has diluted some of it being driven back to Africa itself?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, obviously people like Kunal and Ahad can speak to, the growth of the kind of Indo-fused genres much more, because the music that I, promote in my events and play mostly is coming out of Africa, more specifically South Africa. So South African Afro House, Afro Tech, three-step, for those who are aware of these sounds. And I think the growth of the genre, like I think what Kunal said makes a lot of sense, which is, labeling it allows people to connect with it. And for people that are, searching for it to actually understand its roots. You know, obviously with Afro House, there's a lot of conversations happening, you know, in terms of the roots being, you know, taken and diluted or being I would say even mislabeled a lot of times. You know, you have Latin house that's being labeled as Afro House and so on and so forth. There's I don't know how much I agree with how it's being labeled by, you know, platforms like Beatport, for example. I think it's more of an economic opportunity than anything, and they're capitalizing off of it. It's cool. But I think that, you know, the growth of the genre, like I'll give my experience. You know, it's hard for me to speak to like just the global as a blanket experience, but you know, the music resonated with me and I think Ahad mentioned the rhythms, like rhythmically, right? We grew up, you know, I grew up playing the tabla for 10 years. So, you know, once I discovered house that kind of had these rhythms that were familiar to me, whether it be batida, kuduro, Afro house, all of these rhythms connect anyone who comes from a cultural background. You could say people of color or people of culture. We all have these rhythms that intertwine all of our ancestry in many ways and our upbringing. So, you know, Afro house was that genre for me. It was kind of the best of all the worlds that the Afghan music and Indian music that I grew up with and Iranian music, combined with the sounds that, you know, are you know, that I resonate with, whether it's like, you know, different synthesizers and the music that I was making as well within electronic music. But I think it just starts with the music and community, and I think, you know, these guys are doing an incredible job, and Descendants has been very much at the forefront within the U.S. of building an authentic Afro house, Afro electronic experience, and I would say, I guess in the U.S. we're probably the biggest one that is very authentic as well. And I think that's what it is. It's like being authentic, you know, tracing the music back to its original creators. That's something that I'm very much focused on as well. You know, I think we talked about that yesterday, where like I book a lot of African artists, you know, to play these shows. So yes, I do DJ, I do produce, but I always make sure that the storytelling traces back to its roots, you know, and I think that's a really important part of what we do, and I think why people resonate with what we do. And, you know, there's all that, you could do all the marketing, you could do all the social media and all that stuff, but people have to really, like, we're in a time where I feel like people are looking for real things to connect with, and people can see through, you know, inauthenticity. And one thing that I love that Ahad has done as well is, like, you know, he has created something that operates like kind of beyond what we look at as the pinnacle of electronic music, where, you know, I'm very grateful to be here, but, you know, I feel like everyone within electronic music looks at this as like the pinnacle of the scene or of electronic music, is like making it to here. But I think what I love about what people like Ahad has created and many others is, like, they operate in their own world. They just create their own world and go where it's resonating, or go, in his case, or some people's, like, where the diaspora is. And I think we're in a time where you can just really create your own world from scratch. And it doesn't have to operate within, like, the confines of what the industry is, you know, or what we're used to the industry kind of telling us.
Well, since we're on you, Ahad, may as well come to you now. 5 years on now since you created Dialed In, and you touched a little bit earlier on just the emotions and the moments that you saw when you created that space for people to come together in the aftermath of lockdown, and just seeing tears on the dance floor. Just talk us through the journey that you've been on the past 5 years. Obviously, you work really closely with local government and certain initiatives in London that I think have been quite essential in the journey of Dialed In, and why it now feels, as we're talking about moving into ownership, why launching the label now feels like the right next evolution point for you guys.
Quick pause for a second. If you're enjoying this episode, make sure you hit follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. A lot of thought goes into curating these conversations, and your support genuinely helps us grow the show and continue bringing these ideas and incredible guests to life. I also wanted to let you know that I've recently opened up a creative strategy coaching service for a select few artists, producers, entrepreneurs, and brands looking to grow with more clarity and more intention. The reality is, in today's music industry, we all know that talent alone isn't enough anymore. You need to know how to position yourself, build real relationships, create momentum around your releases, and move confidently across multiple lanes at once. So if you're looking for some guidance on building your brand, navigating the industry, connecting with the right people, signing to your dream labels, and creating opportunities that genuinely move the needle forward for your career, then feel free to reach out to me directly. You can reach me on Instagram at dj.n1nja. Alrighty, let's get back into the episode.
Yeah, so even before Dialed In, I was running a night called No ID, which was very small, and the idea was I saw a lot of South Asian amazing artists just isolated in their own genres or their own worlds, but we ended up just linking up with each other because even Nabiha Iqbal, for example, she just put on Facebook, like, do I know any Pakistani DJs? Someone tagged me. Then me and her went for pizza together, and then we were just friends since then, you know what I mean? And there was something special about it because there's so few of us. And so it started from that community. And so after a few no IDs in London, pandemic hit, we're like, I don't know when the next one's going to be. In the meanwhile, other collectives started popping up, like Daytimers, some of who were even at the first no ID and have told me, like, okay, that really inspired us. So you have these knock-on effects. Around the world, even Australia, you got Curfew. Obviously, you got what Indo Warehouse are doing, and like starts to become like a global movement. In the meanwhile, I got reached out to by Waltham Forest Council for people who aren't from the UK. There are different boroughs in London, and Waltham Forest is one of them. And they said to me, we would love for you to do something focused on South Asian artists. In the back of my head, I was like, I've always wanted to have a festival. So I was like, let's do a festival. And the vision for that was, a wide range of music, really, not just electronic music. And so there was 3 rooms. One of them was more like grime, techno, jungle, people like Nena, Debonair, all just sick people within their own lane who probably have never operated within like a South Asian community because they might not have thought it was for them, because they might have thought, South Asian stuff's probably just Bhangra and stuff like that, you know what I mean? So it was like about being contemporary and just like allowing people the space to do whatever they want to do, On the live stage, we had like Auntie Flo and Sarthi Kowa doing like an ambient experimental thing, and like, jazz musicians. Even we had like a punk takeover one year. So, but in terms of what you're talking about, the feeling, like, yeah, people were just like hugging, crying, like someone even wrote a poem about it. And then, a lot of people came to check it out, one of whom was Skrillex. He was hanging out with us all day. We ended up going back to back at the after party. Next day, he called me up. He was like, bro, let's go for dinner. Like, what the hell was that? Like, I want to like bottle up that feeling and like, and I think it did end up going on to inspire him to do other stuff. So yeah, really indescribable what that was the first day, and then everything since then, from helping to put together the first ever South Asian stage at Glastonbury, to putting on the first boiler rooms in Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, to being in these cultural institutions like Barbican and South Bank. It's been an amazing journey, and like 5 years later, it only feels right to just be like. And then one other thing I want to touch on quickly is, outside of the label, is we run this thing called Dialed Industry, because as much as artists are important, it's about the people behind the scenes. So Dialed Industry is workshops. It's basically like one day, maybe we'll have like an IMS, which is all South Asian artists, right? I've manifested it now, live in front of all of you. Why the fuck not? Do you know what I mean? And so we can pass skills on, we can share skills. Like, we need more managers, we need more booking agents, we need more people, A&Rs. And that's the only people that are going to understand the nuance of the artist, because at the end of the day, if you're a brown artist getting signed to a label where everyone's white behind the scenes, then they might just put you in a bucket and be like, right, okay, this is you only go in this one genre, or whatever it is. And yeah, we got to treat each other with care and nuance and understanding, and there's so many layers to that, whether it's which country you're from in the region, whether it's which diaspora you're from. And, there's often a disconnect between people that live in India and, NRIs, for example. funny thing today, like Indian people making fun of the way NRIs dress at Coachella because it's too on the nose.
I wasn't going to bring it up, but it's been on my mind.
It's too topical, you know what I mean? Those kind of tensions need to be explored, and the only way that we're going to explore them is through conversation, through working together, collaborating, and I think that's really important.
Can I ask you about Bass Doll? Because it's the first release on the record label. And I feel it'd be really interesting for people to understand the lifespan of it as a track, really, and how you've brought together, obviously, Sonny, you mentioned Skrillex, and someone like Raf Sapera, who I just feel like his sort of reverence to the tradition of Punjabi sounds and styles. How did you bring them together in the studio alongside this whole kind of orchestra of instrumentalists? How did it come together, and what's it been like seeing the record now roll out globally?
Yeah, I'm conscious to try and be quick because I know there's a lot of us here and very little time. But after Dialed In and linking up with Sonny and him just like trusting me as a curator, he asked me to come out to Miami and work on some music together, potentially for one of his next albums, like which is more globally inspired. If you go on the Skrillex Reddit, his fans are like detectives. They already know all about that album. Around, I guess my whole role in that process was to just show him bangers, innit? And so I showed him some Raf Sapera, and instantly, like, I posted this video of him. He's basically doing the bhangra on his balcony in Miami, and he really connected with it. And so I DM'd Raf, and I was like, "Yo, have you got any stuff that we could put?" Like, he didn't believe me at first. He was like, "Who's this guy? He's trying to scam me," like saying that he's working with Skrillex. But so then at that time, we actually just ended up using one of his acapellas. And then I played it in my boiler room, for example, and like a lot of other places. And everyone was just like, when is this one coming out? When is it? I know Kunal was asking for it too. I'm pretty sure you were one of the few people I sent it to before it was released. Basically like, we were like, it's not going to do it justice for him to collaborate with a Punjabi artist and just have a sample. Like, let's put him in the world of it. Let's make him understand like what this music's about. So we did a studio session where we invited a lot of traditional folk Punjabi and northern Indian classical musicians from tabla, sarod, sarangi, tumbi, what more, like algoze, the double flute. And basically we just had a day of just jamming out, and it wasn't even about like we need to make a tune out of this. It was like, let's just get into this like insane, amazing, ancient headspace. And Raf is very knowledgeable on that, and he actually taught us a lot. He taught me a lot that day. Basically some of the recordings for that was almost used like a sample pack for what ended up becoming Bass Doll, and that's why Sonny was very keen to have the actual breakdown in there, which takes you into out of like house and techno, or whatever you want to call it, to like halftime bhangra. And it's crazy to see that being played to like thousands of people, you know what I mean?
It is. I watched you playing it in Lahore, and it just panned to this uncle in a topi just having it off. And it was just like, yeah, it warms your heart. Farah, my multi-hyphenate sister, you are an artist, a journalist. You've created this incredible experience we're all enjoying here at IMS. We had a moment last month, didn't we, together, where I got to watch you make your debut in Fabric, warming up for Mo Black after releasing on his record label with your stunning, stunning track in Bali. We know what it takes to be South Asian female artists to reach milestones like that. Take us back to what it felt like and just the journey that it's taken to create your sound and get to that point.
Thank you. It was pretty. It went by in a flash. Like I'm sure many of you guys, you've done similar things. It always just, I had a 2.5 hour set time. So I was like, this is amazing, but it just flew by. And Fabric was the first club I went to, age 15. I became a member of Fabric first at age 12, just to get the CDs in the tins, And I went to a school that was really high pressurized. It was an all-girls school. I was a tomboy. And, going to a place like Fabric for the first time in my life, it changed everything because at that time the internet wasn't really out properly. So, you just were in these four walls that you were exposed to. And when I got to Fabric and I saw this dance floor and people that, weren't judging you in the slightest, and the sound system, obviously, and first of all, just to hear a kick drum on a sound system at Fabric for the first time was obviously mind-blowing. And then to see the DJ, obviously, who absolutely had it in the palm of his hands. It was Adam Beyer. It changed my life, and it got me into this thing called house music. It changed so many. Obviously, Fabric has changed so many lives, and I move through the world very I'm a planner, but I'm also strategic thinker, but I leave a lot of things to chance, because I just feel like that's life. It surprises you in the most amazing way. And I just remember it being December 2025, and I'm thinking about the roadmap ahead, and it was like, this is a blank canvas. I don't know what the year ahead holds. Obviously I have IMS and certain anchor points, but yeah, I just suddenly I released on Mo Black, and out of nowhere I got this email, and I couldn't believe it. It was just the bookings at Fabric, whatever, and I was just like, I just can't believe this. And it was because of the release on Mo Black, and sometimes you meet artists like Mimo who have been so supportive, who just get it, and just believed in the hard work and everything. I mean, I've been in this industry for 18 years, started as a DJ, and as they say, there's no such thing as overnight success. So it was amazing to share that with my tribe, the Ninja tribe, who showed up in full force, and it's something that I'll just keep to me for a long time.
Yeah, and I'm very conscious of time, but I wanted to make a quick nod to that shocking stat that we found out yesterday, that still 15% representation of female DJs in electronic music, and that stayed static, unfortunately, for the past few years. So, Kunal, we sat down with each other just over a year ago. You guys were getting ready for Coachella. This moment was being dubbed Indochella, and you said to me, we're going to put it on for the culture. You absolutely did that, and then some. Just explain to us what it takes to create an experience like that from the ground up, and how has it informed your thinking now for what you're describing as Indo Warehouse 2.0?
For us, it's always been about the experience. So when we have an opportunity to perform on a stage like Coachella, for us, it's what's the experience we want to create for people, And there's obviously a lot of people there in attendance, but everyone knows that Coachella is as much about the YouTube stream as anything else, and so we want people around the world who are watching to feel the connection to what we're doing. We had an opportunity to perform kind of like most DJs do in the Yuma tent, but we wanted to perform on stage, and we wanted to put other performers and artists on the front of the stage. Oftentimes, in our culture, the dancers or even some of the instrumentalists are behind the artists, and we wanted them to be on the front of the stage. So that was our plan and our vision for a long time. But Coachella is a very interesting place because there's nothing in Indio, California, so you have to bring everything to Indio, California. It takes about 6 months of planning, and it's very expensive, but it is something that will always live with you. And now, being a year gone since we performed there, all the memories that we had last year working as a group and a team just kind of flooded our heads and our hearts. And it's really special. And I think that we're going to see more and more South Asians take stages at Coachella, and represent who they are as artists. And I think it's just a beautiful moment. Now, how we take that into what we're doing next, I think that what we have found now where we're at in our journey, we've been around for 4 years. So we look at that period as learning and educating ourselves in a lot of ways and having these experiences. And now we want to take that into the music. And now we're very focused on creating music for us as artists, and hopefully share more of that with the world.
Hamid, I'm very conscious of the fact that we are all Westerners here on this panel, and you and I talked at length about what you've created with Descendants. I have to say is a world-class community that just are ride and die loyal supporters of the music, and even the spaces that you play in. It still manages to retain this feeling of kind of like intimacy in the crowd and the energy. And we talked so much about you driving the culture back to Africa and collaborating with artists there and really supporting the development of them there. Just talk us through the journey from, when you started in your little warehouse apartment that you were telling me about up until you going to South Africa and kind of thinking, okay, how am I going to be judged here on this stage with the sound and everything you've learned from doing that?
Yeah, it's been a wild journey. Like Faraz said, it's you see I would say I've experienced this with Descendants over the past 5 or 6 years now, since the pandemic. But I've been in the industry since 2013, and I've had a lot of ups and downs and experiences that felt great, failed, felt great, failed, and I think a lot of us experienced that. I think if you've been in the industry for long enough, you've probably been through it, it's in some way, shape, or form. So now with this project that I created, Descendants, and yeah, it's been really resonating with people around the world. Like you said, we've hosted events in South Africa, in Kenya, in London at Fabric, and I really think that it's retained its essence because of the intentions that we put in it, the effort that we put in it. It's you see the marketing, you see, the artists that we book and so on and so forth, but it's really like the things that people don't see that make things retain its essence. For example, in New York, where we started, it was a lot of outreach on the ground, right? Finding the people within the house dance community or people that we felt like we wanted to experience this music that we love so much. It's a lot of outreach on the ground. It's a lot of groundwork that it takes to build a community, and constant communication and connection with those people as well, so that when you grow, you're not just neglecting them now because you're like, okay, I'm selling tickets, so I don't need X, Y, Z. But it's like, no, you really have to be there for the people. You really have to care about those people that, even helped you build that foundation. You might be the face of something, but there's so many people that have, carved that path and spread the word about the event from its inception that, we have people that have been coming since the first event that we hosted consistently. And that's like priceless. That means that you've really retained the essence of it because those are the people that really know why you started it, right? Those are the people that really felt those humble beginnings and when you're really pouring everything into it. And the fact that we still have people that come consistently to the events that have been coming since the beginning, I think just speaks to, how much we've continued to pour into it. And how it's resonated with people all over the world, it's really hard for me it's something that's quite surreal. But I think it's something I mentioned to you yesterday, which is that, no matter where we go or host events, it still retains like a certain type of essence. So it doesn't even feel like I'm in a different country. Once I walk into that room, it feels like home. It feels like Descendants, right? And I think it really has to do with a lot of the groundwork. And we do that also in other cities that we work with. We connect with people in different communities that are local. And once again, it's the things that people don't necessarily see, but it's the important effort that we put in. We've hosted panels in Kenya. We've hosted dance workshops in Kenya and dance workshops in Amsterdam for ADE. We've hosted workshops for 4 years now during ADE. So it's like all this kind of community work that we do on the ground that is really priceless. It may cost you money. It may, ADE doesn't make you money, right? It's like an expense, but it's our way of giving back also, to the artists and the people that really built us because we couldn't do it alone.
Well, all I can say is it absolutely translates from what I've seen in 2D, watching the videos from across the Atlantic, having it off in my dressing gown. I'm like, this vibe is electric. We have to reflect back on the subcontinent in South Asia as well. A lot of people are talking off the back of Circo Loco, for example, just getting cancelled and people worrying about what that's going to do for electronic music events in South Asia. Kunal, I wondered, how have you found the recent shows that you've done in India? And, how do you feel the development is going there with the underground sound specifically?
That's a juicy, loaded question.
Sorry,
right
I did. There's a very journalistic question there. I'm so sorry.
I mean, I think I'll tell you this. If you get a chance to go in India and experience like the scene, I will say the people that come to the shows are exceptional. Performing in front of people there is one of the highlights of the year whenever we get a chance to go there. there's different pockets from commercial to underground, of course. So I think it's just a really diverse. You can't kind of bucket into one thing. I want to throw it over to my brother, because what he's done in Pakistan, I've been amazed, and you can maybe speak a bit about the scene there, because there's various pockets. I whenever you're playing there, I'm like, I want to play, man. The parties look insane.
Yeah, and the annoying thing about it is you might not be able to play because of visa reasons, right? And
We'll find a way. We'll
Vice
find a way.
versa, vice
That's why we're
versa.
here. Someone's going to solve that for us.
yeah, but I think that's something that a lot of people don't know, and I think there should be more awareness of the fact that Pakistani artists can't go to India and Indian artists can't come to Pakistan. Like, how messed up is that, right? Let me not get too deep, but like through a line drawn by, the British colony 75 years ago, now we can't have that artistic exchange, and luckily we can in the diaspora. That's the beautiful thing about Dialed In. You got Indians and Pakistanis, enemies, all dancing together, you know what I mean? But yeah, back to the question, I guess, like, putting on a rave in Pakistan is fucking crazy. So, alcohol is illegal. Mixing of women and men is frowned upon. People dressing how they want. Obviously, there's a lot of loopholes that you have to go through. But then, when you can pull it off, the joy is just crazy, because if you imagine, in London, I can look on RA and there's 100 options every weekend. In Karachi, it's not like that. There's hardly any parties or places where people can go and just release. So it's amazing for us to, we work with people on the ground, so we have that local sensibility. And, we always book artists that are local as well as internationals. And I think it's just the start of what we're doing there. And just to note, we did a small party in Colombo as well, in Sri Lanka. There was activity in Bangladesh. I wasn't able to go to that. I would love to go there. Nepal, amazing. One thing about Sri Lanka and Nepal as well is, both Indians and Pakistanis can travel there. I just think we're really just scratching the surface right now, and that's the most exciting part.
Pakistan's in the bar, baby.
Yeah, for real.
Anyway, talking about skimming the surface, I knew this would happen, that time was going to fly by so quickly. IMS have a golden question for this summit, which I thought is a good way to wrap this up. Farah, what does a truly, redefined dance floor look like to you?
Yeah, so when we were picking this theme for IMS, we were really conscious of the fact that there's so many external forces right now shaping the dance floor. It's not just one thing. I think the obvious thing is obviously phones, and that's one of the first things that I think so many clubs are being really mindful, even here on the island, to try and counteract that culture that's emerged from what we see. And then there's also the fact that there's so much private equity coming into this industry that are buying up a lot of festivals, and the impact that has on homogenized lineups. So a truly reclaimed dance floor, it does require intentionality in terms of programming, in terms of not being restricted to booking someone because of their social media following, and having a true space to express and not be defined by politics. That's what the essence of this whole thing was about. We're here because we felt connected and transformed by the dance floor, and we obviously have been losing that transformation in collectively and individually because of the forces that have dictated what is going on the dance floor.
Hamid?
I think there's so many. I have so much going through my mind, especially just hearing from your experiences, seeing your experiences in India, hearing all the boundaries that you had to go up against in Pakistan. Music and where my family is from is banned. Music. Forget about it, like a concert. Forget about anything. They've banned music, right? And these things kind of are just kind of penetrating my brain right now, because I think when we talk about music and the dance floor, it's these things have to be mentioned, and I think that we should all be appreciative of the fact that we can even be here, and do what we're doing, and the work that you just described, which is like going to a place where there aren't many events hosted, but doing it on a scale where it makes noise around the world. And that's what shapes, I think somebody said it yesterday, which is, if the events community, if the music community is unified, we're more powerful together than politicians. And I really believe that. I actually really, really believe that. I think that these are the things that influence change. So I think that when we talk about reclaiming the dance floor and talk about the impact that the dance floor has, I think it needs to be looked at beyond just what's happening even in that moment. And because it's very impactful to so many people, we talked about people crying at events, people writing poems after coming to an event. I can't even imagine. I mean, I've seen you, I went to your event during ADE, I think it was last year at Melkweg, and like just seeing that many South Asians, seeing that many Indian people experiencing an electronic music event, which is beyond rare, especially in the West, right? Bringing together diasporas of different cultures, because it wasn't even just South Asians; it was quite diverse in there as well. And I'm just appreciative to be in this company where the mission is so much bigger than just a ticket sale or monetary gain or selfish kind of reasons. Of course, we all have these experiences, and we're all as things grow, we do benefit from that, of course. But that's not what's driving, I think everyone that's sitting here, and I think that's why Farah so intentionally curated this in a way, and I'm just really honored to be in this company. So that's what when I look at the dance floor and the dance floors that we create internationally, it's really like I have these moments of awe of just seeing what I'm seeing and understanding that the impact that it's having beyond just that moment, and it vibrates through. It vibrates through the world, as you can see. It's really quite special.
I'm getting the sign, but I think we have 30 seconds if you have anything you'd like to add.
Okay, I'll be super corny. As a marketer, there's 4 C's that I'll create right now, okay? So first, we're all creatives. I think in order for us to redefine the dance floor, we have to continue to create. I think all of us are builders. We've built, you've heard the stories today, so I think we need more people to continue that journey. I think that the next C, what would it be? It would be don't compete, collaborate. I think we've all worked together in some capacity and we're richer for it. So I think more collaboration is great. I think we have to stay curious. I think it's really, really important for us to be asking questions versus judging. And then finally, I think, everyone here has talked about this, but the role of community is really, really important. What that means is you have to invest in the people that support you. You don't just take their money and count how many people come to your event. You have to think about what's important for them and give them something back. We have to find a way to actually nurture those relationships. So those are my 4 C's.
Oh, thank you, guys. I knew this time was going to fly by so quickly. We could have done this threefold, truly. I just think there's so much darkness in the world, and, we've seen our people be constantly judged and stereotyped. But for me, anyway, sitting on this panel with 3 Pakistanis, an Afghani, and an Indian here in Ibiza, is my inner child is dancing, truly. And please, by the way, we're doing the first ever showcase DJing tomorrow by the pool here, 4 till 6 of South Asian talent. And then we're heading to Doll Villa to watch our brothers Kahani and Kanal smash it back to back with Pete Tong. So please come and celebrate with us.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we enjoyed having this conversation. If you want to support the show, hit follow, leave a rating, or share it with someone in your crew because it genuinely helps us grow and it helps us to continue bringing incredible guests and conversations your way. A lot of thought goes into curating these conversations, so if you want to go deeper as well, head to the Mission Makers website for a special essay that I've written breaking down the biggest takeaways from today's conversation. Lastly, I've also been releasing a ton of music recently on some of my dream labels like Mo Black and Get Physical. It's deep, it's ethereal, and it's heavily rooted in Afro-tech progressive vibes. So if you want to check that out, you can find it on all streaming platforms and Beatport under my alias Ninja. That's N1NJA. Appreciate you being here, keep it laser focused, and I'll see you in the next episode.